The Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, has made his first speech as UK Prime Minister in Downing Street. He met King Charles III at Buckingham Palace earlier this afternoon, with the monarch formally inviting him to form a government. His meeting came after the King accepted his predecessor Rishi Sunak's resignation as Prime Minister. Sunak says he will also step down as Conservative Party leader, but not immediately. The Labour Party won the general election in a landslide after 14 years of Conservative government.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation. I want to thank the outgoing Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. His achievement as the first British Asian Prime Minister of our country, the extra effort that will have required, should not be underestimated by anyone. And we pay tribute to that today.
Joining us is Aaliyah Vayez, who is an international relations expert, to delve further into this as well. Aaliyah, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, you just heard the new British Prime Minister there as well, also thanking his predecessor. World leaders have also been congratulating him and the Labour Party for what is really a historic moment in 14 years. But what does this mean for the Labour Party in terms of the global stage?
Thank you so much for having me. I think for sure it's a historic win for the Labour Party. It's the best they've ever performed in their since their beginnings, and I think it's in the same breath I'd say it's a historic loss for the Conservative Party, and it really speaks to what the British electorate think of their performance thus far. I mean, 3 prime ministers in the past 2 years, and you know, several really big domestic policy and foreign policy challenges that they've just failed to meet in the eyes of the British public. But onto your question, Masa, about what the Labour Party brings, I think, you know, while it's historically been considered a left-wing party, I think what Keir Starmer is bringing is quite a centrist take to British politics. And I think really with that, he's emphasizing domestic stability, as well as reassuring not only European leaders, you know, across the way, but also fundamentally the US. You know, his first phone call will be to the White House to ensure that, you know, these world leaders kind of receive him as a stable partner, a stable force, you know, completely opposite to what we've had under Conservative Party leadership in the past year, where, you know, we've had scandal after scandal, failure after failure in terms of not only foreign policy issues, you know, in terms of defense spending, etc., to domestic issues like immigration, you know, like the cost of living, but really assuring the British public and the world that Britain is a stable force, and that Keir Starmer is offering that stable and reliable hand.
Should we also read into this? You know, some have said, you know, the shift from the Conservative to the Labour Party was not necessarily a vote for the Labour Party, but it was an anti-Conservative vote. Does it even matter when you have such stellar results?
I think, you know, I think, to be honest, it's a really good take, and it's one that, you know, famous pollster John Curtis, who's well watched in the UK, on the UK political landscape, has purported over the past 24 to 48 hours is that it's not only just Labour's win, but it's a fundamental take on Conservative Party leadership. They fundamentally failed to handle several domestic and foreign policy issues, and I think not only that, I think we're seeing, for example, 5 independent MPs that have run absolute grassroots campaigns, all of whom have supported Palestine, you know, amidst the Israel-Palestine conflict or war that's currently going on. And it's very telling about what the British electorate want out of their politicians. You know, again, Labour's taken the entirety of Wales. It's taken every seat in London. These are huge not only wins, you know, in the standard conventional sense, but these are exceptionally telling about the areas, you know, key vital areas to the economy that want a stabilizing market force that Labour is supposed to give under Keir Starmer.
When we look at some of those foreign policy issues as well that you mentioned earlier on, as well, thinking about the role of Scotland as well and how that has impacted the United Kingdom and also Brexit.
For sure. And I think, if we look long term at post-Brexit years, I think it is not deemed the economic results that the Conservative Party promised. Again, the British electorate and British society generally, especially in terms of foreign direct investment from businesses into the capital of London, especially in terms of immigration. All of these hardline issues that the UK deals with, not only on a domestic level, but also affect their standing in the international realm. I think that Labour is very much saying that we're countering, as you mentioned, providing an anti-conservative take. We're countering what has happened over the past couple of years, and I think, to be fair, the SNP, or the Scottish National Party, took an immense beating. Their cause, their riding on issues like immigration, like independence. An independence referendum just simply wasn't enough. And I think we see this most starkly in Wales, where not one Conservative seat has been held. Additionally, it's historic that in at least 11 cabinet members of the Conservative Party lost their seats, seats that were considered safe for the Conservative Party, where they actively didn't campaign or canvass as hard as they did in other places. They redirected their resources, and I think it was to their detriment.
And looking at that detriment and the loss as well, considering that this is a pivotal year for many countries who are going to the polls, we're already halfway through, some have already completed those elections as well. But do you think that when we look at global politics as well, there had seemed to be in recent years a shift away from a left kind of approach toward more of a nationalism kind of approach, more toward the right kind of approach. But looking at these elections as well in the United Kingdom, do you think it will shift the results in other countries where we will see us going back towards more of a centered approach and more perhaps even to the left than going to right?
I think it's a very poignant question, especially we're in the year of elections, right? And I mean, one of the biggest coming up is, of course, the election in the US. And I think it really speaks to the relationships populations have with their government and what they want on their domestic and foreign policy agenda. And I think in the UK and along with the rest of Europe, it's really about considering what that electorate wants. And in this case, the right, or some people do name the Conservative Party far right, simply wasn't enough. The British public have given the Conservative Party at least 3 terms to prove themselves, to deliver things like Brexit, to deliver the promises post-Brexit that were promised during the Leave campaign, and they simply couldn't do it. And when faced with foreign policy issues like the Russia-Ukraine war, like Israel-Palestine, on top of rising cost of living, unemployment, education, rising immigration, etc., the list goes on. It simply fell short on several parts. And I think as much as one can look forward and say, is this a wave of centrism coming across Europe? I think we can see that it isn't, simply because of the way that the European Union elections have gone, or rather European Commission elections have gone, as well as the French election coming up with the vast majority of support shown for Marine Le Pen. I think in that sense, it's very telling how what Keir Starmer is promising in terms of stability. I think many elections still to watch, but I think we're in for a very stable middle ground first 100 days.
And just before I let you go, Aaliyah, as well, when we're talking about these election results too, just are there any chances of going back on some of these foreign policy issues that cost them the election in the first place?
No, I don't think so. I think very many of the Conservative Party's stances on several foreign policy issues, most prominent has been, pushing defense spending, pushing business investment, cutting corporation tax, pushing, Israel's right to self-defense, for example. We won't see that party specifically go back on anything, post these results, as if they're positions are regretful. No, I don't think so. I think it's very in line with their ideological characteristic. But in the same breath, I don't think we're going to see any major changes in positions from the Labour Party. I think, again, in their first 100 days, we'll see the King's speech come out about next week, outlining the government's, forthcoming agenda for its next year, or rather 6 months. And I think it's going to be very much stabilizing what the UK can already rely on. Again, providing that the British public with a sense of confidence in the fact that you're not going to get any more scandal, you're not going to get any more 360 or 80-degree turns on what you know and trust. And I think a large part of that's going to stabilize the market, as well as stabilize the public's given support for the Labour Party.
Well, Aaliyah, thank you so much for helping us understand all of this and all your insights. That is Aaliyah Vayez, who is an international relations expert.